Hello everyone. I have never made a video before to be posted online, but I would rather write something down and give it much more thought, because I feel I'm much better at the written word than just merely a verbal presentation. However, I am in rather ill health, and I have been for many years now, and I must prioritize my job as well as taking care of the 3 cats that I have that drive me crazy and the chores around the house. So I was thinking a video would suffice to be a compromise, because today I would like to talk about something that's been bothering me for some time, and I would like to talk about the elections, specifically the presidential election that is to happen tomorrow in the United States. The main issue that I want to talk about is why I chose to become an expat, and how that's the influences that drove me to do that, and maybe some reflections on it for the elections. Well, the thing is, I don't very much like the United States. Now, don't get me wrong, I consider myself highly to be an American, and to have some sort of Yankee blood flowing through me, to use a idiomatic turn of phrase. But I don't very much like the United States in many ways. One of the reasons that I chose to leave, besides poor decision-making skills in my young 20s, was that I was very much dissatisfied with the George Bush administration, and I hated the proto-fascistic tendencies they had, especially drawing upon evangelicalism in the United States, and as well as its illegal war in Iraq, and basically its ignorance of human suffering and creating an ownership society that ignored poverty. By the way, I'm not good at explaining these things in a very succinct manner, so this may be roundabout. When I met Yelena, I decided that it was a nice time to get out of the United States, and I haven't been there in 18 years. In fact, I can't even vote because I'm not domiciled, although I at least tried to apply. So I was raised in an evangelical household, and it drove me a little crazy. So those of you who know me from the United States probably recognized the pure insanity that I would spout randomly. Oddly enough, being in Serbia, where people here are nuts, has given me great perspective and a better control of my anxiety and depression, which is why I've stayed for so long. But growing up in an evangelical household that wasn't strictly evangelical but very religious, made me highly question not Christian values, because I don't not identify as a non-Christian, which is the most roundabout to say that I very much value Christian values that are purported within the Bible, but I don't think any church represents it. In fact, I think churches should be considered rather anti-Christian. I can't find any church that I would consider following Christian principles. And one of the reasons why I left the U.S. is because there is a severe worship of evangelical Christianity, this conservative line of Christianity, which people purport to say, oh, this is my religion. I don't really respect anyone who says that, because as soon as I hear it, I kind of look the other way and assume them to be a non-Christian. Now, what do I mean by that? Paganistic churches are usually defined by the concept of one prays to a god, and the god gives reward. Now, anyone who has been to a mega church now knows why I may not like Christianity, because the current line of Christianity in the United States is God will reward the faithful, which isn't true, and that's not Christian. Now, on top of this, one of the themes that, if I have enough time to talk about this, is the cudgel, which is a lot of Christianity and mainstream thinking in the United States is used as a type of cudgel which to beat other people with, to not be able to state what they freely think. So evangelical Christianity, such as, well, I have the right, excuse me, I have the right to hate gay people or trans people because it is my religious principles, is a way to dominate others and violate their own freedoms, which I severely disagree with, and do not think it's Christian at all in nature. So, I really rather hated that growing up. I hated the going to high school and having Christian people pray over me as if I was a sinner because I didn't agree with them. Again, the cudgeling. I did not like that with George Bush's administration, where I disagreed with the war in Iraq, and I came here. And over the years, I have stayed out of the U.S. for that very reason, because the United States, as a democracy in America, I can never remember names because I've been very sick. Oh, this is going to drive me crazy. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. It's Tocqueville. Tocqueville makes a claim that Americans have one way of thinking, and that way of thinking usually moves over time for an accepted consequence. In the time that I've been here as an expat, it was gay marriage was wrong, and now it's perfectly accepted and it's mainstream, whereas it's always been acceptable and ethical. It's just the perceptions of people viewed it as being acceptable. Now, the whole time that I've been here, the acceptable, or the Overton window, has moved to accept fascism. And that's my biggest concern, because for anyone who's still watching this, leftists in the U.S. don't realize the United States is a very conservative country. It's highly conservative. It blames other people for their own faults. It only values individualistic tendencies to make money, and it frowns on failure. It doesn't actually allow for differences outside of an accepted norm. So, I hate that about the U.S. Now, many other countries are like that too. In fact, I live in an ethnically homogeneous country that has no multicultural exposure. So people will constantly say, "Why do you put the Christmas lights up now? It's not Christmas." Or, "Why do you drink tea with milk? Why you come to our land?" No one can understand any difference. So, to go back to this evangelical cudgeling, most leftists don't realize in the U.S. how conservative the United States is. The concept that there has to be a religious authority, or that business is good, or that these social concerns must all be agreed on. Those are very conservative values. America's a very conservative country, and I'm not that conservative, and I never have been. But now, with the election tomorrow, I'm very concerned that leftists will say, well, you know, Kamala Harris is not against holding back Israel and Gaza. Well, so I'm going to stay out, or I'm going to vote for a third candidate, or I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, or I'm not going to vote at all. Israel has its own agency. It's its own country. It doesn't do whatever the United States says. And certainly most people know that, but still, what do we expect from the United States to do? It can announce to Israel, oh, don't do that. In fact, if it was up to me, I would withdraw all funding to Israel, even its interest-free loans that it gets to buy U.S. weapons. But I'm not in power, and then it loses an ally in the region. It would be better for someone to come up and state, this is wrong. Genocide is wrong. Genocide is always wrong. But we're not getting that. What we're getting is a choice between a person who would say commit more genocide and a person who would try to at least mediocritely stop it. You're not in a good position to decide between those two because it's not this richness of decision making that people have. Rather, it's you're forced to choose between these two things. And most people say, well, I don't want to participate in that system. You are participating in that system by existing in it. I know that's a very Sartre or Sartre way of Sartrean way of putting it, but that's just how things are. Now, I've lived in a foreign country for a long time that has slid increasingly into authoritarianism. You probably don't want to live inside an authoritarian country, and you want to stop it as quickly as possible, because one way that an authoritarian country governs, at least in the modern world, is it's an information autocracy. You're not where people are not really allowed to speak of or believe anything outside of a given norm or statement. In many ways, the United States is already living in that, where no one can really say publicly a thought that people don't agree with. And I'm not going to both sides this, because there are no sides in this consideration. It's a norm that's not accepted. That deviation is not accepted. So whether someone wants to say a vile, hateful thing or a very forgiving thing, it's not really accepted. To give you a case in point, Christians in the United States are not Christian. So if I state that, I usually get people who say, they'll start arguing that the church is bad and Christianity has always been bad. Or they'll argue, no, how can you dare... Ooh, too loud. Sorry. How can you dare say that Christianity and its Western values and whiteness and very, very authoritarian ways. Christianity in the United States is not Christian. The main fundaments of Christianity are based upon faith, forgiveness, and self-criticism or self-realization. Whereas American Christianity has none of those values. If a person who declares themselves to be Christian in the United States find something offensive, if they're evangelical or this American type of Christo-fascism, they say that should not be allowed. It should be banned. So no abortion, no homosexuality, no LGBTQ+, nothing besides what I view to be true. That's not Christianity. When gospel tells one to remove one's own eye, as opposed to proceed with sinning or an impure life, that's one's own eye, not another's. The second, or when we look at the Gospels and there's a woman and she just prays that if she could just touch Jesus's cloak, she would be cured. It's purely based on faith. The current environment in the U.S. is that there is a person who is saying, believe in me in a realistic manner that's not a heavenly manner or something, and you will receive salvation. That's Donald Trump and the Republican Party. So not only is that in violation of the first commandment, but there's no real procedure based on faith, because they want to make their faith into reality on earth. The second problem with that is that the Christianity which people profess, so tomorrow someone who says they're Christian will vote for Donald Trump, is that they totally ignore the concept of the Good Samaritan. So again, if it was up to me, I would let anyone enter the United States. Immigration is one of its strongest points. We have laws and procedures to remove someone if they've committed a crime. Some crimes are a matter of just circumstance, and it's not anyone's fault, and people look to point, but it's not that. Instead, people in the United States usually are vindictive and filled with vengeance, which Christianity says one cannot do. As a case in point, where I feel that Trump or Christo-fascism is not Christian, but fascism, is that the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is a story of a person who rescues another, but the person who rescues the other is their enemy. Where the Good Samaritan, where a man, a Jewish man, is walking along the road, he's assaulted by bandits, and a Samaritan who is in a death feud with Jewish people at this time, he not only rescues him, but pays for his wounds to be healed and to rest. It's a counter narrative. You're not supposed to hate your enemies. And what I don't like about the United States is there's constant vengeance. So, Donald Trump, we are going to put into concentration camps 13 million people who violated, border laws. Why? I mean, they're the enemy. We're supposed to forgive them. And but no, we must be vindictive. Another concept of the United States that has always bothered me, again with Christianity, is the tale of the prodigal son. So the prodigal son, most people know as, in the United States, that he asks his father for the money that he could get, and then he comes back to he comes back and he's forced back, and he seeks forgiveness. Most people forget that, one, he's supposed to be forgiven, and two, it's not just that he wastes the money. He's sold into kind of a servitude or slavery. There's a plague, there's a famine, there are many bad things that force him into an unimaginably bad position. When I look at Donald Trump and the Republican Party and they say, we do not care about these people because they are poor, they have fallen on hard times, they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. The problem is that completely, again, goes against the gospel. Now, after all of this, you probably think Timothy went to be a crazy religious person. These are things I've held for a long time. I'm not religious. I don't believe in God. It's just that I'm trying to show that I hold these principles of forgiveness and understanding others and assistance and community and charity, as well as faith, while the other side doesn't. They're a party based on fascism, which is a creation of the will of the state to have something based upon suffering of the other. It's very dangerous. Here in Serbia, it used to be a country called Yugoslavia. There was a leader called Milosevic, and he went to the largest group of those of the ethnically heterogeneous country and said, I will make you the strongest and in power. Now, most Serbians don't like when I challenge them on this because they were led through an ethnic reawakening, but it destroyed the country, and it resulted in mass violence, which still to this day cannot be resolved. When Donald Trump stood up 8 years ago and said, only I can fix this, and I see devastation, that was echoing Slobodan Milosevic. He gave a speech in this place called Gazmezistan. I get names mixed up, I'm sorry. And he said this. He led the country to ruin, destroyed lives, just for himself. Him and his wife robbed banks of the value just so they could pocket money. They went to go live in Russia, until they died in Russia. Their son, him and his wife and his son still lives there. They're criminals. But they viewed, instead of this concept of having any faith of building a better society, just the trivial natures or the baubles of just daily life and material goods. And now, in the United States right now, that's what we have. And instead of recognizing issues and problems, we have a party that says, I'm going to destroy all of this for you. The destruction of another group or a people should not make one feel good. It's not really your enemy. The destruction, for instance, when Donald Trump and the Republican Party say we want to round up illegal immigrants and make them suffer, that doesn't give any positive nature or any positivity to our daily life. In fact, it makes us suffer because we bear the consequences of the corruption of it. Donald Trump separated thousands of their children from their parents. I don't feel this got covered up enough in the news because of illegally entering the country as punishment. And you have to ask yourself, would you do, if you had to enter another country, legally or illegally, would you want to be separated from your own children? And the answer is no. The golden rule is always a good standard. We should not treat others the way that we wouldn't treat ourselves. But yet, many people argue, no, those are our enemy. Now, I am worried about this because Donald Trump could very well win, and then people could find themselves in an America that starts crumbling apart. Or if he does win, it means that the American experiment is over. This bothers me quite a lot because people don't understand how special America is. America has been a special country for the past 200 years, and especially for the last 50 years, in which rights have been expanded and people have developed into a more pluralistic and open culture. It's usually not like that. And those are values that I have. Now keep in mind, Donald Trump doesn't care about anyone either. He's not a Messiah, and he cannot do God's work. He's only, when they run to be in power, also, I don't think that Americans can understand how dangerous it is, because there's a concept, after being a teacher for a while, I've tried to explain to others that one cannot recognize something unless they already are aware of it. So many students I have, I'll teach them a very common idiom, such as "hear it on the grapevine," and they have heard that song 100 times by Marvin Gaye, and yet, as soon as I tell them that, they realize what it means. In a circumspect manner, it's also applicable to the rising fascism in the U.S. The United States has not experienced complete authoritarianism and fascism. So maybe people cannot be aware of it until after it has happened. And they think, oh, it will be wonderful and we'll get exactly what we want. That's not going to happen. The individual will not be allowed to have their individual identity. Instead, there'll be a preset identity which everyone has to follow. There'll be no freedom. There's kind of, if anyone's read 1984, everyone talks about, oh, it's not, a rule book or a manual. People usually forget there's a metaphor in which Winston Smith buys a little heirloom. It has a piece of coral inside. And the idea is that at least his mind is separate, that he can think differently, at least there's some freedom. When he's arrested, it's shattered, because it's to show the goal of totalitarianism is to control the mind as well. And it's odd because this cudgeling and this Christianity and everything, it's usually the opposite of what they say. We've known this for a long time, but they claim that they're religious. Instead, they're not. They're just based in the mundane world. They say they want a better world, they want to destroy. They say they want ability to be free and to think. They want to control. And one thing that they want to control is you don't realize that they see Elon Musk, Donald Trump. They're oligarchs. Oligarchs are people who have a lot of money and they want more money. And again, it's just the mundane concept. They just want to control things. And one problem is that Americans don't realize that there's a boundary in which they could cross, in which they themselves become purely meat to be sold. Many people look at the war right now in Russia and Ukraine and they say, how can Russians go so willingly to war? Their leaders don't view them as having any power or being anything. Some people probably only view them as how many rubles can I steal per thing, per meal pack before sending the soldier to die off to war. You yourself are a resource economically. When they say in Project 2025 that they want to privatize public lands, they're taking something that everyone owns. It's a public land, and they want to sell it to someone else to deprive you of it. When they say we want to remove the National Weather Service and privatize it, that's something that you benefit from, and they want to charge you for it. They view these things as something that's a resource they can make money from, but it's not for you. It's just for them. You are not one of them. You are poor, and they look down on you. Okay? And even if you're middle class and own 2 cars or 2 homes, you're still poor to them. You're not one of them. And they won't let you be in that. That is a corrupt oligarchy. It's an aristocracy. So when they say this and they say, we want to do any of these tasks that they have, when they say we want to outlaw abortion, they will find a way to make money off of that and profit. That's something that people don't understand. Now, there's another absurdity about this, and it's the end that I would like to state, which is, there is something which is, I want to bring up from Thomas Paine. Now, Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. In Common Sense, which he was writing at the, basically, eve of the first year of the American Revolution, and into the next, he tried to make a case that it didn't make any sense for one man to control all the colonies. That Americans were better off being a pluralistic society in which they all worked together to achieve a goal, as opposed to, King George. Yet, what we have is Donald Trump. The Republicans come up and say, I must rule absolutely and only I can control everything. One of the things that, to go back to the cudgel metaphor, that no one's watching this anyways, but to go back to the cudgel metaphor, we're constantly beaten over the head with the founding fathers in the United States, who weren't perfect and who were terrible people, who owned slaves, and I don't know. There's a great joke. They shit in water and drank it, and they couldn't figure out why they were sick. That kind of thing. They were drunk all the time. Yet, if we take them and say these are our role models, and if Thomas Paine is a founding father, he said, how can one man rule all this wealth and all this grandeur? That was 13 colonies. Now, it's the continental United States plus Alaska, plus Hawaii, plus the overseas territories. How can one man rule all of that? It's not... It's a betrayal of the founding principles. That's what it is. But they will use it in order to say no. For those, again, well, I'm an expat. I don't agree with American gun culture. You don't need a gun, and you will never convince me otherwise. Why do you need a gun? I need a hunt. Well, here's your hunting rifle. No, I need an assault rifle. No, you are just a tool in order to sell weapons and scare to, as opposed to being a real person. You're a commodity. So, what do we look at? The Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia. Instead, we have people just going around randomly shooting one another. And instead of addressing the issue, which needs to be addressed, we need to have a discussion about it, we have beaten overhead Second Amendment founding fathers. But people don't understand that what the United States was an experiment that was going to try to change ruling structures, and it's evolved. It hasn't always been the same. There's no constitution. God, the amendments are just changes to the Constitution. Nothing's perfect. And yet, on the far right, because the Supreme Court is ruled by the far right, we just have beaten over our head originalism, which is accepting what they consider to be the founding principles of the United States, which is wrong. They're wrong. They're illegitimate and wrong. That's it. Now, tomorrow, I know that most people who know me won't really care what I have to say, and no one's even watching this, but I wanted to state something. And I know that people who are my friends who are far right, they'll vote for Donald Trump. People in Serbia supported Slobodan Milosevic in Yugoslavia. Now they're in a landlocked country where all they do is complain that they didn't commit genocide when they did. You're going down that road. And for those on the far left who can't vote for Kamala Harris, no, she's a right candidate. She's center right, of course. Congratulations, you're in a terrible position in a very conservative country, and that's the best you're going to get. Jill Stein is not a person who's a serious candidate. There's no Green Party. There's no local candidate. She's a Russian plant. Okay? I can't say how I know, but I happen to know someone else who was sitting in that photo that she's famous for, and she guarantees that she's just paid money by the Russian government to be a spoiler. Don't forget, she's sitting across from Michael Flynn, who wants to basically be a general and activate military guard to kill your fellow Americans. And perhaps I'll end with that, because one of the other things tomorrow is, remember, one of the reasons that I'm against Trump is he doesn't view you as an American. The whole side of them don't view you as American. You can be a citizen, they don't view you as an American. They don't view me as an American. Why? I'm a straight man, I have Christian principles, I'm a business owner, because I don't support them. So, anyway, I'm very ill, and I hope that was at least something that someone listened to a little bit, because I'm quite lonely and I have no one to talk to about anything. So tomorrow, when you go out, vote for Kamala Harris. Or if you're a Trump supporter and I changed your mind, but you don't want to vote for Kamala Harris, just don't vote at all. Just do something again in 2028. Because remember, I happen to believe that Kamala Harris probably would be an okay president as far as things go, but Trump, you will probably never get to vote again. So you can just not vote at all and try again next time. It's fine with me. Now, that's it. And good luck tomorrow. We're all counting on you.